Welcome back to the Shacknews Awards, where we are just handing out all sorts of awards to games, game companies, things that are inside of games like DLC or cats, but also people. This is the Person of the Year 2024 award, a very prestigious award here at Shacknews. To be eligible for this category, you need to be a person and you need to have maybe existed in 2024. That's about it. Obviously, you have to be related to the gaming or technology space, mainly gaming here. This award is inspired by that Time magazine cover. See, Donovan, magazines were these things that you could actually buy that were physical and you could read, and there were covers of them, and they would be on like a newsstand. You see, newsstands were these places where you could buy physical media. And people used to look at the newsstand and look at the cover, and that would determine if they would buy the readable material or not.
Right.
So you see, this is how reading.
Even on an iPhone, though.
No. This was like physical media, not like an
Oh.
iPhone. Yeah, it's a
Wow.
whole thing. Anyway, this award is inspired by that Time magazine cover, but we have our own Shacknews flair here. So yeah. Anyway, the more you know, right? Let's get to the nominees. Head of Larian Studios, Sven Vinke, just kind of continued his amazing leadership from last year. Said some very nice things to the industry. I believe it was during the DICE Awards acceptance speech, Ozzy.
Yeah, it was. He's spoken a lot during that time. I don't remember if he was on the stage or not, but I believe he's also. He got cut off at the Game Awards last year, if you'll recall. And since then, he released his full speech, and he's continued to be an advocate for workers in the industry in a time when their voices are being diminished more and more with each passing day.
I'm paraphrasing here, but he said something about how, like, you may have lost your job this year, but it's not because you're not of value. We still value you here in this industry. And it was kind of a message to people who are feeling down and out that, like, yes, this is a cyclical downturn, but you're still a talented person. You shouldn't give up on your craft.
And he's sending the message that workers in this industry should be valued. And just because larger companies and publishers are valuing the shareholder more than the employee, that doesn't diminish what everybody does. And it doesn't mean that they don't build fan bases in themselves. Like, workers matter in this industry, and it's something that I feel like has been greatly overlooked in favor of, shareholder value. It's just tragic.
And then you also look at the success Larian has had. They've exhibited this core philosophy, but it hasn't been to the detriment of sales or the quality of their game. Like, you're talking about one of the most critically acclaimed games of all time, Baldur's Gate 3. And then like also everything they've done for Baldur's Gate 3 this year, the free updates. We're getting 12 new subclasses next year, and crossplay. So yeah, they've done a lot of great work both on the industry side and the messaging to the broader industry, but also just what they're doing over at Larian is still really impressive. But yeah, solid nomination. Next up, I guess this would be People of the Year because it's two of them, or Couple of the Year. Donkey and Leah, video game Donkey, known YouTuber, announced him and his wife were creating a publishing arm called Big Mode. They've seen some success this year with the release of Animal Well. I believe they also published like a Ikaruga-like game. I can't remember the name of it. But yeah, so they've published 2 games. They are working on other stuff. This is an example of the evolving industry. You have a YouTuber that now is a publisher, and he's leveraging his YouTube channel to promote the games that he's publishing. So like Animal Well was featured in Donkey's E3 2024 video. I know E3 doesn't exist, but he still calls it E3 2024. And yeah, he's like, check out this trailer for Animal Well. They've also done some cool stuff just with Big Mode branding, Biggie the frog, all the community stuff. Like, yeah, they took a risk. I think you're going to see more YouTubers kind of follow them. We saw that with Off-Brand Games this year, Ludwig's publishing arm. But yeah, I think Donkey and Leah are trailblazers in this industry, and they succeeded this year. So congratulations! I think a worthy nomination for sure. Uh, sorry, I'm kind of announcing the nominees and talking about them here. I'll stop that. Next up, Abu Bakr Salim from Tales of Kenzara Zal and also Raised by Wolves. Localthunk, the developer of Balatro. Uh, Eric Concerned Ape Barone. That's the Stardew dev, right, Donovan?
Correct.
Who's kind of spent the last year just working on updates for that game. And then last but not least, Tomami Sano, the first woman lead game director on a Zelda franchise. She was the lead on Echoes of Wisdom, and she crushed it. So those are the nominees. We already kind of talked about why Sven is here.
But I will note to add to that, the speech I was thinking of was GDC. When Baldur's Gate 3 won Game of the Year at the GDC Awards, Sven took the stage and basically called out the cycle of layoffs that are just infesting the industry, and basically going, publishers keep firing people, and then when it comes time to make the next game, they're out of devs, they got to hire people, and then they got to lay them off again, and at some point the cycle has to stop. And he's been like one of the most vocal advocates for retaining talent and for emphasizing the importance of talent. And I think that for him to use that platform is admirable and makes him a worthy candidate in this category.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we already talked about Big Mode and Donkey and Leah. But yeah, I think
I'm happy they did this, because like you see it, especially as we like see more YouTubers like making news for the wrong reasons. Like, you can get into someone like Mr. Beast or something like that. But Donkey uses his platform for something positive and to give people a voice that otherwise wouldn't have one. And to take a chance on a game like Animal Well is something I hope to see more of from more of YouTubers down the road.
Yeah, it's Star of Providence was the game I was thinking of. That's the bullet hell shoot 'em up that they published.
Also, the way Donkey marketed Animal Well in some of his videos, he did it in a clever way. I will give him that.
He's just funny, man. He knows. I want to say they were in an indie world also where Donkey was featured, like just kind of behind the dev, causing problems for him. But yeah, Donkey makes very funny videos, so I think like applying that humor to promoting a game, it works. But yeah, I think they took a big risk this year, and they succeeded. So I think that's and they're also leading, to your point, because they're at the front of this trend. They're kind of trailblazers in this trend, and I think it's not unlike what we see with YouTubers trying to like chase Mr. Beast stuff. So like, I'm gonna make a burger chain. It's like, yeah, it's not that easy. Or I think Donkey has people trying to emulate his success with this too. Abu Bakr Salim, I just want to give this guy an award for how he handles idiots on Twitter. He's one of the calmest people in the known universe, given the kind of nonsense that's been coming at him all year. I think just getting Tales of Kenzara Zao out there in the world was a huge deal for that studio, and also for Abu Bakr himself, as this is a very personal story about his relationship with his father. But then there's also these more cultural undertones to the game. Yeah.
And he's just an outspoken advocate for diversity in games, and the reason, and he's called people out for being hateful jerks about games like Tales of Kenzara Zao, and those games are important to have out there. If you've played, like David's played the game, like you don't see stories like that very often, and like the stories are just, they're impactful, and there's something that you don't really see a lot of in mainstream gaming, and it's important to have those voices out there. And that he released the game and became such an outspoken advocate is actually admirable.
I see David nodding approvingly. Yeah.
I just echo everything Ozzy said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a solid nomination. Yeah, I'm voting for this next nominee. Just gonna throw it out there. I think Localthunk is he's part of the biggest story in gaming this year. Uh, you can't tell the story of 2024 in video games without mentioning Balatro. A game so powerful that Bill Lavoie had to delete it less than a week after installing it. not because he hates the game, but because he's worried he will have no time to do anything else in his life.
That game just consumes you.
It's insane how much I'm playing it on mobile.
I downloaded it on Switch specifically to avoid downloading it on mobile for that reason.
I mean, I have it on Switch also. Anyway, it's just awesome, man. The indie story of the year right here. Great game. Just very unique idea. And I like seeing small teams succeed. And I think Localthunk is a champion of that. Donovan, why do you think Concerned Ape should win Person of the Year? I'm guessing you. I don't know if you were the one who nominated him in this space, but I know you're a huge Stardew fan.
I don't know if I was the person who nominated him here, but he's had a great year. I mean, he shipped Stardew Valley update version 1.6 to not just PC but mobile and consoles this year, which another massive update that kind of transformed that game for the what feels like the 10th time. But I think something that's really special about Concerned Ape is how like transparent and straightforward he is with the community. Obviously, people have been dying for updates on Haunted Chocolatier, which will be his next game, the long-awaited follow to Stardew Valley, which was announced years ago at this point. But I believe he had a tweet somewhere between the release of Stardew Valley 1.6 on PC and the mobile and console ports, which kept getting delayed and finally came out about a month or two ago, where he was like, here's the deal. He's like, I've completely stopped working on Haunted Chocolatier. And he was like, I'm not touching that project until I get this update to my players on console and mobiles, mobile devices, and so on. Which I think was not something a lot of people wanted to hear, but I just kind of admired that honesty from him as a developer, where he talks very openly about how sometimes he'll get in over his head or he'll be a bit too ambitious with things for Stardew. And I think he's gone on the record saying at some point he has to stop working on that game because it'll just be the rest of his life. But he always comes back and puts new things in there for players. Obviously, that game has fostered a tremendous community. And it was just about a month or two ago, I think he announced they're going to do a second run of the Stardew Valley Seasons Tour, which is just a live orchestra performing music from that game, which is obviously a beautiful soundtrack. And they just announced more dates for it this week. And he's just, I don't know, just as an indie developer, he's just so hands-on with his mega hit property and the community around it. Whenever there's a Stardew board game or anything, he's always right there. To compare it to another game in this category or person, Stardew collabed with Balatro this year when they did the Jimbo and Friends expansion pack. The second run, I believe, had like Stardew cards where you could get like Pierre or Major Lewis or Marnie on the little Stardew cards. Concerned Ape did the artwork for those, like himself. He did the pixel art for the Stardew characters that are in the free Balatro DLC pack, and it's such a like, no shade to Balatro, but such a like trivial thing that any artist could have been hired to do that, and they would have looked just as good. But for him to just be so hands-on and still have such care for that IP, 8 years later, I think is really remarkable.
Is there any paid DLC for Stardew?
No.
So,
Sorry.
and I know this is like kind of like I'm not meaning to make this, but ongoing game. I'm more about the person because I think it's very interesting that like a solo indie dev who's obviously their game has been very financially successful, but with how long it's been out, Concerned Ape could have nickel and dimed that. Like these don't need to be free updates. And if it was a big corporation behind it instead of like a really cool person who's just trying to do right by their game and their community, these would have cost money. And instead, you just have a person who's just doing the right thing. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's worked his way into like the No Man's Sky dev territory where like every time they announce a new expansion, people are like, please charge me. Like, I'll give you $5. You've given us so much content at this point that it doesn't even feel fair. But yeah, he, as big as Stardew Valley is, nobody cares about that game more than he does, which is pretty cool.
correct me if I'm wrong, Donovan, but wasn't one of the big things to come out of the recent update that you can drink milk in the game now?
It's not milk, it's worse, it's mayonnaise.
Mayonnaise. Sorry, you can drink mayonnaise. That's right. You can drink mayonnaise.
He has a lot of fun with like the small updates in Stardew. I think with 1.6, in like the weeks leading up, I think every day he tweeted like one like bullet point from the patch notes, just like to tease fans. And that was one of them. Yeah, I was like, you can now drink mayonnaise.
That stuck out
yeah,
to me
but, you
because
know.
that's a level of detail that you
Yeah.
have to be insanely infatuated with your game, I think, to do that. And yeah, I appreciate Concerned
Mhm.
Ape for that. I think a
Which-
very good nomination. And yeah, it kind of speaks to the longevity of that game.
Mhm.
And then yeah, last but not least, does Jeff Keighley know that we got a new Zelda game this year? Has anyone let him know yet? But yeah, we got Echoes of Wisdom this year, and Tomami Sano, I believe, is the game director on the title. The first Zelda game where you get to play as Zelda with a woman in charge of game direction. Kind of times are changing at Nintendo, it feels.
I think that's very important. Sorry, I didn't mean to step on your toes.
No,
I thought you were.
No, go ahead.
I think that's very important because it kind of goes back to what Ozzy was saying about like you're not seeing these stories, and this diversity. And I think we need far more women in positions of power in game dev, in everything. But in this case, we're talking about game development because maybe you don't get that story, right?
Mhm.
Like if it's not a woman in charge, and like we're gonna see different characters with different motivations and different perspectives. So kind of like I think that's crucial, and I think the fact that the game is a smashing success, and it's an exceptionally good video game is great because it incentivizes Nintendo and other people to continue to let women run studios and be the creative directors and tell these different stories that are not just like a different perspective from the male side, but a different perspective from the female side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's important to note, like, Japan is kind of behind the rest of the world when it comes to women's rights, or at least the patriarchy over there. So Nintendo being a stodgy old Japanese company and doing this is a big deal. And she crushed it. But yeah, in case people are wondering other stuff she had worked on before, she did work on the Link's Awakening Switch port. She was the project coordination on that. Bowser's Inside Story plus Bowser Jr.'s Journey in 2018. She was assistant director on Twilight Princess HD in 2016. Also worked coordination for Ocarina of Time 3D in 2011. David, I know you're quite a fan of that specific port. But yeah, she's been working at Nintendo for quite some time. First job was on Tekken 3, working on stage texture editing. So she's been in the business for a while. I think this is her biggest role she's ever taken on, and like I said, she crushed it. So definitely a worthy nomination. I think a lot of people may not even realize she exists because Nintendo isn't very vocal about these sorts of things in general. But that's why we're here to remind people about the people in our industry that make awesome games, and make the industry great. So those are all 6 of the nominees. How about we vote?
Let's do it.
Hey, Donovan, start with you.
Yeah, I mean, as big of a Stardew Valley fan as I am, I'll always feel indebted to Concerned Ape, but I think this has been Localthunk's year, and I think Concerned Ape would even agree with that himself. So my vote is going to go with Localthunk.
Nice. Danny.
No, I think these are all pretty good. I have seen Philem handling some of the nonsense on social media and such, and as someone who has to deal with that, I appreciate it. So I'm gonna give him the vote here.
Abu Bakr Salim. Good vote. Everyone here deserves the nomination too, so it's not like us picking one does not mean we don't like any of the others. They're all great. But there can only be one person of the year. Unless Donkey and Leah win, then there'll be a people of the year. Greg.
I'm going to go with Sven.
Mm-hmm. TJ.
I am gonna go with Localthunk. Balatro has been one of the funnest things I've played this year. And I think that there's a magic in coming up with something as simple and cool as like a solitaire or a minesweeper, but nobody ever does that kind of simplicity anymore. And I think that's part of what makes Balatro so refreshing.
Mm-hmm. It's minimal. And at first glance, you're like, this isn't a good game. And then you sit down and you're like, my God, this is the best gameplay loop I've seen in years.
Mm-hmm.
And that's don't judge a book by its cover kind of thing. Ozzy.
I'm going with Donkey and Leah.
Mm-hmm. Bill.
Tomomi Sano. Not Sano.
Steve, host of the Steve Tendo Show.
I'm going Localthunk.
Balatro is available on Nintendo Switch. Have you not streamed it? I might have asked you that
No.
already.
You have. I haven't.
One of these days. David.
Yeah, I admire what Localthunk did, but I feel like what Tomomi Sano accomplished is so significant. She didn't just creative direct a game, right? At Nintendo, she directed a Zelda game. And that shows a lot of faith and confidence in her, so she gets my vote.
Yeah, and like I said, her first big opportunity, and she crushed it. So, yeah, for sure. We do have one absentee ballot. Sam is voting for Donkey and Leah. Let me see what's going on here. 1, 2, 3.
I think you could potentially be a deciding vote.
Yeah. Yes, I could. 1, 2, 3 to 1, 2. If I vote for Donkey, I cause a vote off or like a runoff. If I vote for Tomomi Sano, I create a runoff.
I believe when announcing the Localthunk animation, you said this is the one I'm voting for.
Yeah, I did. Donovan.
It's a long time ago, Donovan. Things has been developed.
As soon as he said it, I was like pocket. Like, back of my mind. I was like, that,
23 minutes ago. You're right, Donovan. 23 minutes ago, I said I'm gonna vote for Localthunk.
We have it on video.
And I made if you recall, I made the case for Localthunk in that nomination. It's really hard, man. I like all these people. Like they're all awesome. And I really like The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom.
I just force things to get earnest if I change my vote.
Are you gonna change your vote? You can do it.
I think I'm gonna do it.
Do it.
I will give Tomomi Sano the love here. So I do agree with that.
Oh my God.
I appreciate
this is unprecedented.
Knocking it out of the park in that way, and also doing it in that atmosphere.
That kind of shows how tough the category is, though, because like you don't even blink an eye because you're just like he just went from one very worthy nomination to another very worthy nomination, right? Like,
yeah.
Greg, are you keeping your vote?
Yeah, I really do think like Sven said some stuff that probably they didn't want him to say at the Game Awards. On top of that, like he's also been this like beacon of light in this industry.
Well, the thing is, he didn't get to say it at the Game Awards because he got cut off.
Yeah, he got cut off because they didn't want him to talk about it, right? The advertisers don't like that.
No, they had an ad for Doritos to get to, Greg.
Yeah.
It had nothing
Jeff
to do.
does that crap where he's like, "Oh, everybody's got to keep their speech under 30 seconds or something."
Yeah,
dude, he won your top award. Like, let him talk, you know?
Look, that advertiser spent $300,000 for those 30 seconds, Ozzy, and we're gonna get to them on time. So just enough
You're
of
gonna
your
get me
awards.
off on a rant. I'm out of order.
And his company was on the docket for Microsoft to acquire them, and he turned them down. Or they were like, we got that in an interview. We confirmed that, which was interesting, and nobody picked it up.
Anyway,
but yeah.
So there is a tie. There's a Localthunk. Tomami Sano tie that I am the tiebreaker of. And Donovan is going to hold me to my propositional logic from earlier.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm voting for Localthunk. I can't not vote for Localthunk. I hope we keep talking about Tomami Sano in the future. Like, I hope this is just the beginning of a new part of her career where she's a game director.
Look, I mean, people have said that the next Switch generation, like that old guard is going away. Like it's time to pass on to a new generation, and I think she's going to be a big part of it.
Yeah, because we very likely have seen the last Zelda game made by Aonuma, so who knows where the 3D Zelda goes from here. But yeah, congratulations to all the nominees. All of you deserve to be praised for what you did this year. But there can only be one person of the year 2024 here at the Shacknews Awards, and it's Localthunk, creator of Balatro. Hooray.
Like I said, winning in Balatro is simple.